Imagine a dusty frontier town, peaceful one moment, a battlefield the next. When ruthless outlaws set their sights on a widow's homestead, they think they've found an easy mark, but they've made the worst mistake of their lives. Little do they know, this quiet woman was once a legendary sharpshooter known across the West as Quicksilver. In a high-stakes gunfight beneath the blazing Arizona sun, with bullets flying and lives hanging in the balance, she'll risk everything to protect her daughter and her community. But will courage and grit be enough to overcome overwhelming odds? If you love thrilling tales of frontier justice, old-fashioned heroism, and the raw excitement of classic Western action, stay tuned. And don't forget to subscribe. There are plenty more stories coming your way that you won't want to miss. In the wake of the silver boom, the vast and often brutal terrain of the southwestern frontier became a stage for figures of both infamy and legend. Renowned gunslingers roamed the deserts, each carving out a name with steel and gunpowder. There were those like Crossfire Kilgore, who allegedly shot the wick off a lit lamp from 100 paces, and there were the Riley brothers, said to run illicit rackets from the Rio Grande to the old mining camps. Yet none of these names would resonate in history quite as profoundly as that of Anna Quicksilver Carter, a woman whose quiet demeanor masked talents more extraordinary than most men in the territory. Some said she could thread a bullet through the eye of a needle at 50 yards. Others whispered rumors of how entire outlaw posses avoided whichever township she called home. Years after the silver rush of '78, people still talked about the crumbling old stage stations, the abandoned mines, and the ghost towns that dotted the desert. With wagons creaking under the weight of hopes and meager possessions, settlers came in search of land, independence, and new beginnings. They found a place that was as dangerous as it was promising. Native tribes defended their ancestral homelands, and outlaws roamed the stage routes, ambushing coaches and robbing honest folk. Local law offices struggled to keep pace. Offices that once operated out of half-rotted shacks now had jails too small for the rising tide of criminals. That was the world Anna Carter stepped into, albeit under a name she had deliberately chosen to cloak her past. She arrived in Stillwater Falls, a secluded settlement hugging the base of rose-tinted mesas, where the winds carried rumors as swiftly as tumbleweeds. This outpost was more than a speck of civilization in a harsh domain. It was also a crossroads of ambition. Blacksmiths, ranchers, prospectors, and traveling merchants all converged, trading supplies or news at the town's single mercantile. A short main street flanked by dusty boardwalks, a humble clapboard church, and a small schoolhouse. It was modest, yes, but it was determined to thrive. On a particular morning in early spring of 1886, Anna guided her wagon into Stillwater Falls, with her 10-year-old daughter, Lucy Carter, perched quietly at her side. They were dressed in simple clothes, Anna in a faded calico dress, Lucy in a hand-stitched frock. Beneath the child's bonnet, her eyes glinted with a steely awareness well beyond her years. Observers who saw them pass might have noticed an unspoken bond between mother and daughter, an unshakable unity of purpose. One man standing outside the newly painted general store rubbed his chin thoughtfully as the wagon trundled by, noting the tall trunk kept conspicuously near Anna's reach. In those first moments, few in Stillwater Falls suspected that the soft-spoken widow would one day alter the course of their town's history. Fewer still guessed that she was the famed sharpshooter once known across half the territory for remarkable feats of accuracy. Yet if anyone looked closely into her gray-green eyes, they might have caught a flicker of something unyielding, the same calm, lethal precision that had once caused entire gangs to think twice about tangling with a single woman. As Anna and Lucy stepped down from the wagon, they had no intention of making a grand entrance. Their only ambition, at least in appearance, was to find a modest home and a fresh start in a land that offered neither pity nor compromise. Sheriff Emmett Finnegan, who'd served as the chief lawman of Stillwater Falls for nearly a decade, watched mother and daughter approach from his office window. His leathery face bore the brand of long years under relentless sun, and his wide-brimmed hat hung on a hook behind him. He had seen his share of greenhorn settlers arrive, as well as cagey drifters trying to outpace the law. Yet something about Anna Carter was different. She moved with an effortless poise that belied the assumption of a solitary widow. Finnegan jotted a note in his worn leather journal, recalling a principle he had once used to categorize strangers. They're either running from a past or running toward a future. It was too soon to decide which category she fit into. Setting his pencil aside, he opened the door and stepped onto the porch. He reached them just as Anna was speaking to Luther Jenkins, owner of the small mercantile where nearly every newcomer first conducted business. "Afternoon, folks," Finnegan greeted. "You two just in from the trail?" "Yes, Sheriff," Anna replied with a gentle nod. "My daughter Lucy and I, we're searching for a place to settle. We heard there might be a cabin for sale a few miles outside town." Her voice had a soft, cultured note that suggested she wasn't a lifelong frontierswoman. Yet it was also clear she was no stranger to adversity. Lucy clung to her mother's side in silence, but her gaze roamed the street, taking in everything, every door, window, and alleyway. The child reminded Finnegan of a young deputy, constantly alert. Jenkins, a portly man with an apron perpetually stained by flour and coffee grounds, nodded eagerly. "Ah, you'll be wanting the old Dawson place? Fellow who owned it took off back east not long ago. Hardly used." Anna's mouth curved into a faint, polite smile. "Could you direct me to someone authorized to sell that property?" He gestured across the street. "The notary, Mr. Crenshaw, handles all real estate. Step inside after, and I'll set you up with some supplies." While Lucy hovered near the wagon, Anna followed Jenkins indoors. She returned after several minutes with a small sheaf of papers tucked into a leather pouch. Sheriff Finnegan had remained outside, engaging Lucy in a gentle conversation about the town. How many families lived there, how children attended school at the single-room schoolhouse, and which local families had homesteads in the surrounding valleys. Lucy answered politely, but Finnegan could sense something measured in her responses, as if she'd been coached never to reveal too much to strangers. When Anna emerged, she thanked the sheriff with polite formality and quietly indicated to Lucy they should continue on to find lodging for the night. Before they left, Jenkins sidled up, noticing the trunk inside their wagon. He asked with genuine interest, "Ma'am, you carrying valuables or heirlooms in that chest?" Anna's eyes flickered briefly before she smiled. "Just some sentimental keepsakes. My husband's old belongings." Her mention of a deceased husband seemed to explain the unobtrusive sadness that hung around her. Still, as the wagon rattled off down the main thoroughfare, the sheriff couldn't shake a subtle feeling of intrigue. There was a tension in Anna's posture, a quiet undercurrent that suggested she wasn't merely fleeing tragedy. She had a reason for being here, specifically. Finnegan closed his eyes for a moment and exhaled. "Another mystery in Stillwater Falls," he thought wryly, "and I suspect this one's going to matter." They took a temporary room at the Willow Bend boarding house, run by a no-nonsense woman named Victoria Lane. Ms. Lane, a widow herself, recognized traces of grief in Anna's demeanor. Yet she also noticed Anna's willingness to wake before dawn, performing chores and errands with a quiet efficiency. Lucy accompanied her mother everywhere, often carrying small packages or rummaging through shelves when Anna shopped for supplies. While Anna's presence caused mild curiosity, Lucy was a puzzle the other children couldn't quite figure out. She was polite but not gregarious, standing slightly apart during their few encounters. Miss Teresa Nichols, the schoolteacher, made a point of introducing herself one afternoon. Standing on the boardwalk outside the mercantile, Miss Nichols praised Lucy's reading ability after hearing her read from a posted notice. Anna's faint smile suggested pride without boasting. Within a fortnight, Anna finalized the purchase of a simple homestead that the locals had taken to calling the Prescott Cabin after its former owner. It lay about 3 miles from Stillwater Falls, nestled against a low rise where a thin line of cottonwoods suggested a modest spring. Even from a distance, one could see the roof needed repairing. The fence had collapsed in places, and the small barn leaned perilously to one side. Many families would have balked at the work required, but Anna never hesitated. She methodically unloaded her wagon, arranged her and Lucy's belongings, and began taking inventory of the tools and materials needed for extensive repairs. Nearly every day for a month, she rode into town in a borrowed cart to buy lumber, nails, hinges, and even gunsmith tools. Ms. Lane remarked on those purchases. "Seems like you're stocking more than a simple farmstead needs," she said, curiosity shining in her eyes. "Don't mind me, but are you expecting trouble?" Anna smiled politely. One can never be too prepared out here. "Of course, Miss Lane only nodded. Most frontier women kept a rifle or revolver close at hand. But it was Lucy's watchful gaze that made Ms. Lane wonder if there was more to it. Like mother and daughter were expecting trouble, not just from wild animals or opportunistic thieves, but from something, or someone specifically. Meanwhile, Sheriff Emmett Finnegan maintained a careful but discreet watch. He saw Anna's new property from time to time as he made his rounds, patrolling for stray cattle or reporting minor land disputes. The first time he visited, he found Lucy helping her mother build a new chicken coop. The child handled a hammer with surprising skill. Anna had apologized for not coming out to greet him sooner, explaining she was mid-task. Yet Finnegan noticed the rifle propped within arm's reach. Clean, oiled, ready. He also noticed the calluses on her hands and the faint lines around her eyes that came from a life lived on guard. For a widow, Anna carried herself with an assurance that he more commonly saw in experienced ranchers or even ex-soldiers. When he mentioned it, Anna merely deflected with a quiet chuckle. "You pick up many skills when you have to fend for yourself," she said. Though he left soon after, Finnegan's suspicions lingered. In his years as sheriff, he'd learned to trust his gut about people. Anna Carter might appear to be an unassuming figure. But if rumors were true about certain lady sharpshooters that used to tour the territory, or about certain tragedies near the old rail lines, she might be more formidable than anyone realized. And in a place where outlaws were never too far away, formidable was precisely what Stillwater Falls might need. Paragraph 4, approx. 560 words. The southwestern frontier had a way of compressing time, so it surprised some townsfolk how quickly the Carter homestead transformed from a dilapidated shack into a modest yet sturdy cabin. Through the scorching summer days, mother and daughter labored side by side, fixing the roof, reinforcing the walls with additional timber, and even digging a small cellar for food storage. Lucy showed a remarkable aptitude for measuring distances and angles, an ability Miss Nichols had already praised in the schoolroom. People began to remark on how Anna must have taught her child practical mathematics, perfect for a future of ranching or frontier living. Every so often, Anna would invite Ms. Lane or Luther Jenkins over, not for idle socializing, but to ask about local traditions, upcoming events, or to trade goods. She inquired about the best feed for chickens, the preferences of the traveling peddlers, and which times of the week the stagecoach usually arrived. It all seemed normal enough. Yet in many of these innocuous conversations, Ms. Lane sensed Anna was gathering more than day-to-day gossip. She was building a mental map of the region and the people in it. She stored away details about who rode patrol and on which trails, or how far the telegraph lines extended. Meanwhile, Lucy joined the other children in the small schoolhouse at the end of the dusty street. She quietly excelled, impressing Miss Nichols not only with reading and arithmetic, but also with her focus. During recess, she often stood apart, silently observing her classmates' games of tag or hopscotch. When pressed by Miss Nichols, Lucy admitted she was simply learning by watching, a habit formed from traveling so often. Several times, Lucy asked if the teacher had any books about famous explorers or soldiers who scouted hostile territory, which Miss Nichols found unusual for a child. Still, she accommodated the request by providing Lucy with old geography texts and diaries from the library trunk. As the weeks passed, the mother and daughter's daily routine became part of the quiet tapestry of Stillwater Falls. Locals saw them at Sunday gatherings in the church, a single-room structure with a small steeple. They might catch Anna in the back row, eyes briefly closed in reflection, Lucy next to her with folded hands. When asked politely about their lives, Anna offered vague references to a husband who died tragically back east and a childhood spent on a small farm. She never elaborated, and good manners prevented people from prying too much. However, in a territory as small as this, rumors took root swiftly. One story floating around suggested that Anna had once traveled in a Wild West show, though who could say for sure? Another rumor proposed that Lucy's father might have been a soldier turned scout, which explained Lucy's keen observational skills. Yet these whispers generated more curiosity than suspicion. No one in Stillwater Falls had reason to doubt Anna's good intentions. After all, the Carter homestead was shaping up, and both mother and daughter contributed to the budding community. Anna donated to the church's fund for new hymnals, Lucy helped Miss Nichols repair the school's creaking front steps. The Carters seemed committed to building a stable life here. But at night, when the lamps were extinguished and the desert wind swept across their cabin walls, Anna allowed herself a solitary moment of guarded vigilance. Old habits died hard. Something in her eyes suggested she still expected the past to catch up with them. What nobody in Stillwater Falls realized was how meticulously Anna Carter tracked every crumb of news about bandits or outlaws traversing the territory. She maintained in a hidden compartment under her bed an oilskin-wrapped journal brimming with notes. There were clippings from newspapers, telegraph bulletins, and even scribbled testimonies from folks she'd encountered over the years. Names like Jackson Hawthorne and Jeremiah Viper Slade appeared alongside short annotations. Seen near El Paso, linked to stagecoach robbery. Another entry listed sightings of Everett Hawthorne near the old mining camps. In each case, Anna compared their patterns to her own timeline, weaving connections between them and certain events involving her late husband. Lucy never asked directly about the contents of that journal, but she knew of its existence. How could she not, living side by side with her mother in a single-room cabin for so long? She also understood, as children often do, that these pages contained the reasons they never stayed long in one place, the reasons her mother always insisted on caution. Yet Lucy sensed that Stillwater Falls might be different. Perhaps here they could let the roots of real living take hold, as they never had before. Still, Anna's quiet vigilance didn't escape the eye of Sheriff Emmett Finnegan. Unbeknownst to her, the sheriff occasionally rode past in the twilight hours, not in uniform but blending in with the shadows just to see what kind of security she maintained around the cabin. He once spotted a flash of movement near the chicken coop, Lucy making rounds with a small lantern, checking for predators. Another time he noticed a rifle leaning by the open window, pointed in such a way that Anna would have a clear line of sight to the tree line beyond. It was impressive foresight for a lone widow. It hinted strongly that she wasn't quite as alone or as helpless as the average newcomer. In late summer, news arrived of a vicious gang known as the Hastings Brothers, 3 men who had escaped a federal prison escort in a bloody ambush. They were rumored to have a special grudge against the law, fueled by old Civil War bitterness and a string of personal vendettas. When talk of the Hastings brothers' atrocities reached Stillwater Falls, tales of burned homesteads and murdered lawmen, people grew uneasy. Luther Jenkins posted fresh wanted posters by the door of his mercantile, each featuring crude sketches of Jackson Hastings, the eldest with a scar along his jaw, Everett Hastings, known for his quick temper and even quicker draw, and the youngest, Jonas Hastings, sometimes called the Kid, though he was already rumored to be deadly with a knife. One morning, Anna lingered by these new wanted posters for several minutes, eyes scanning every detail. She noted the bounties, $500 dead or alive for each Hastings brother, an astronomical sum. Sheriff Finnegan noticed her there and quietly approached. "Bad business, these Hastings," he remarked. "Heard they're coming through the region." Anna's gaze never left the posters. A man doesn't earn a $1,500 price on his head without leaving a lot of bodies behind. Finnegan nodded. "It's making me consider forming a volunteer posse, just in case." She turned to him with a composed expression, that measured calm that was becoming her hallmark in Stillwater Falls. "Let me know if there's anything I can do to help, Sheriff." The Hastings brothers remained a distant threat, at least for a while. Life carried on in Stillwater Falls, weaving a delicate tapestry of normalcy. Lucy continued attending school, often returning with new stories about the region's history as taught by Miss Nichols. On weekends, Anna made small deliveries of fresh eggs and garden produce to Miss Lane's boarding house. The cabin improvements advanced smoothly. A stone fireplace was installed to provide warmth for the chilly desert nights. Yet in the quiet hours, Anna double-checked the latch on every door and window. She tested the tension of the newly purchased bowstrings she kept in a trunk. She taught Lucy how to properly load and unload the family's old revolver without accidentally firing a round. Some might have found the training extreme for a 10-year-old, but Anna believed Lucy should understand firearms for safety. She explained it gently. "Information and practice are better than ignorance and accidents, sweetheart." Meanwhile, rumors of the Hastings brothers grew louder. They reportedly attacked a stagecoach near Yuma, leaving the driver and guard dead. They robbed a small town's bank outside Tucson, shooting a deputy in the process. Each news story arrived by telegraph or through travelers passing through Luther Jenkins's mercantile. Sheriff Finnegan's volunteer posse patrols expanded, with men taking turns guarding the stage road. Still, the threat remained intangible, someplace else, not quite at Stillwater's doorstep. That changed abruptly when a bedraggled ranch hand from the north came galloping into town late one afternoon. His face, drawn and pale, bore testimony to a narrow escape. He breathlessly recounted how he and his boss encountered a group of armed men who ambushed them near a dry creek bed 2 days' ride from Stillwater Falls. One man had a distinctive scar on his left cheek, reminiscent of the descriptions of Jackson Hastings. They demanded the rancher's horses and gear, then shot the boss dead when he resisted. The ranch hand escaped only because the Hastings men heard another wagon approaching and scattered. Anna was in the mercantile when the ranch hand recounted the tale a second time to Sheriff Finnegan. She caught every word, noticing the quiver in the man's voice and the terrified expression that accompanied it. Hearing the name Hastings, Lucy went silent. She knew from her mother's own subtle warnings that those men were more than typical bandits. Anna set down the sack of flour she'd been about to purchase and listened intently. "We have to assume they might be heading here," Finnegan said gravely, exchanging glances with Luther Jenkins and Ms. Lane, who had joined the small gathering. "They've made a habit of moving from one settlement to the next, hitting banks or travelers with extreme violence." Luther Jenkins started to speak when Anna cut in, her voice even. "They might assume we're vulnerable. Small town, limited defenses?" Finnegan nodded. "If I were them, I'd look for an easy target. And Stillwater Falls might look that way." A hush fell over the group. Despite the mild bustle of the store around them, it felt as if the weight of impending danger had settled on everyone's shoulders. Outside, the afternoon sun cast harsh angles across the dusty street. The sense of normal life gave way to a collective dread. And amid that tension, Lucy slipped her hand into Anna's, as if asking silently, "Are we ready for this?" In the days that followed, the entire town began preparing for a possible invasion of the Hastings brothers. Sheriff Emmett Finnegan coordinated with locals to form rotating night watches. A handful of men, some old enough to recall Civil War battle tactics, walked the perimeter after dark. A few ranchers set up rudimentary barricades on the main approach roads, stacking rocks and old wagon parts to slow down any mounted attack. Despite these measures, the townspeople were not soldiers, and their nerves showed. Shopkeepers fretted about leaving their doors unlocked even during business hours. Families wondered if they should send their children away, at least until the danger passed. The tension grew thick enough that you could almost feel it in the air, like a coiled spring waiting to snap. Anna Carter, however, surprised folks by stepping forward to offer strategic ideas. She attended a hastily convened town council meeting in the single-room church. A few eyebrows raised at the notion of a woman speaking on matters of defense, but Ms. Lane and Luther Jenkins quickly vouched for her practicality. Once Anna explained her recommendations, placing watchers on rooftops to cover each other's blind spots, preserving ammunition by focusing on vantage points near the livery stables, people began to realize she was not speaking from speculation, but from knowledge. Finnegan recognized that experience immediately. Her suggestions weren't the kind a typical homesteader would conjure. It was something more akin to a military or specialized scout approach. Seated on a rough pew, Lucy listened intently, absorbing every comment, every question. At one point, a farmer named Josiah Bowers asked if Lucy could possibly be kept out of harm's way should shooting start. Anna responded calmly, "She knows how to find safe ground if trouble comes. We've prepared." The matter-of-fact tone silenced any further objections about Lucy's presence. Later that evening, as Anna saddled her horse behind the mercantile, Sheriff Finnegan approached. He lowered his voice, not wanting to alarm any passers-by. "You've clearly done this sort of planning before, Anna. Are you ex-Army, or do you have a family member who was an officer?" Her eyes flicked up from tightening the saddle girth. For a fraction of a second, he thought he saw the reflection of old wounds in her gaze. "My late husband, Henry Carter, served as a scout for the cavalry," she lied smoothly, blending partial truth with omission. "He taught me a thing or two about reading terrain." Finnegan nodded, unconvinced but unwilling to push. Stillwater Falls could use more folks with that knowledge right now. With that, she gently guided Lucy onto the horse, mounted behind her, and trotted off, leaving Finnegan to wonder about the parts of Anna's story she had left unsaid. That night, mother and daughter worked quietly in the lamplight, reorganizing the trunk that held Anna's old possessions. She checked the condition of her carefully maintained custom revolver, engraved with filigree that hinted at better days. She turned it over in her hands, her eyes distant. Lucy, sitting on the edge of her cot, watched in silence. Anna sighed softly, glancing at the old weapon that had once been her star attraction in countless exhibitions. Now it symbolized life or death in a far more genuine sense. The illusions of showmanship had long since faded. "What's our plan if they come?" Lucy asked, her voice subdued. "Same as always," Anna replied. "Stay alert, stay calm, and never show fear. We'll protect each other and protect this town." Neither elaborated further, but both understood the implications. The Hastings brothers were no random hazard. They represented the very darkness Anna had moved heaven and earth to avoid. The culminating threat that might finally reveal her true identity to Stillwater Falls. And if that day came, Anna's carefully constructed life here could vanish in a hail of gunfire. A strange quiet settled over Stillwater Falls in the following week, as if the land itself was holding its breath. The Hastings brothers had not been spotted nearby, nor had there been any additional attacks on passing travelers. It was as though they had vanished into thin air. But Anna knew better. Predators often lurked in the shadows, waiting for the right moment of vulnerability. In the meantime, Lucy continued attending school during the day. She found solace in routine, multiplication tables, reading assignments, and listening to Miss Nichols's stories of ancient empires. But every so often, Lucy caught herself glancing out the schoolhouse window, half expecting to see riders cresting the hill. She never said as much, yet attention weighed on her. She had grown accustomed to their itinerant lifestyle, but this time, for the first time, she cared about leaving. She had friends now, a teacher she liked, a peaceful life she didn't want to give up. One afternoon, Lucy remained behind at the schoolhouse to help Miss Nichols tidy the shelves. As they worked, Miss Nichols asked, "Lucy, do you like it here in Stillwater Falls? Are you happy?" Lucy, slipping a rag over dusty books, paused. She thought of her mother's constant watchfulness, the underlying dread that someone would rip them from the security they had built. Yet she also pictured the blossoming friendships, the sense of community she had never experienced in all their travels. "I do," Lucy answered softly. "I hope we can stay." Miss Nichols offered a kind smile, though she sensed the subtext in Lucy's words. "I'm glad to hear that. If you or your mother ever need any help, you only have to ask." Later that day, Lucy recounted the conversation as they rode home. Anna's face softened at the mention of Lucy's happiness. She briefly placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "We'll do everything we can to keep it this way," she promised. And it was a solemn vow, one Anna intended to honor. Unbeknownst to them, events were already in motion that would test that vow. In the early hours of a crisp, moonlit night, a pair of silent riders appeared on the outskirts of Stillwater Falls. They did not enter the town, instead dismounting atop a low ridge with a clear view of the buildings clustered below. Their rifles glinted in the moonlight. One carried a telescopic spyglass, which he raised to observe the streets. The other cursed quietly when he realized patrols were posted. The presence of watchers suggested the town was on alert. Their conversation was brief, punctuated by the distinctive rasp of a man with a scar across his jaw. Jackson Hastings, the eldest brother. "We wait," he told the other rider, who might have been one of their associates. "They look prepared. Let's not walk into a hornet's nest." Thus the Hastings faction took measure of Stillwater Falls, noting the heightened defenses, and more importantly, noting the location of each vantage point. Then they slipped away into the darkness, planning to gather more men and return with a force large enough to annihilate any resistance. They had no idea that among the townspeople lay a woman who could match or even surpass their brutality, who had already studied their patterns, their cruelty, and their bitter pride, and who was willing to kill them if that was what it took to protect her child in her community. 3 days after that clandestine scouting, word reached Stillwater Falls through a traveling peddler named Bartleby. He claimed to have encountered rough-looking men who asked detailed questions about the town's layout. The number of lawmen, the types of goods sold at the mercantile, the location of the bank such as it was. They even asked if the road to the homesteads was well guarded. Bartleby, sensing danger, pretended ignorance and moved on quickly, but the encounter left him shaken. Sheriff Finnegan lost no time in convening a second emergency meeting at the church. This time more people attended: ranchers, blacksmiths, stable hands, and even Miss Nichols. Anna and Lucy sat near the back listening. Murmurs circulated about the risk of an outright attack. Some argued that the safest solution was to gather valuables and children, then evacuate to the nearest larger town, leaving Stillwater Falls temporarily deserted. Others insisted on standing their ground. They'd built their lives here and would not be uprooted by bandits. Anna watched Lucy as the debate raged on. Lucy's expression was resolute, as though she was bracing for the outcome. Anna stood quietly and spoke in that clear, calm tone that always commanded attention. "The Hastings brothers prey on fear. If we abandon this town, they'll burn it to the ground, or they'll ransack what's left, and we'll have nothing to return to. We're better off fortifying here and fighting back." A rancher's wife, worry etched on her face, asked, "But how can we hold off a gang of men who've killed lawmen and robbed stagecoaches with ease?" Anna paused, eyes scanning the gathered townsfolk. "We do it by controlling the approach, by choosing our ground carefully, and by ensuring that we're not easy targets. If you look like prey, predators will come running." There was a moment of silence, a hush that acknowledged the deeper meaning behind her words. Sheriff Finnegan backed her up. "Ms. Carter's right. We can't outrun them indefinitely. If we hold our ground, we might surprise them. They're not expecting us to be prepared." Gradually, the tension in the room shifted. People spoke of specifics: forging barricades from wagons, building up the stable walls, organizing watch signals using lantern lights from the church steeple. Miss Nichols volunteered to keep the children in the schoolhouse if trouble erupted, as it had only one entrance that could be easily defended. In that moment, the community's collective resolve began to crystallize. After the meeting adjourned, Lucy lingered in the church as Anna spoke briefly with Ms. Lane. The older woman placed a comforting hand on Lucy's shoulder and said, "You've got a brave mother, dear. She's done so much for this town already, and now she's helping us face our greatest threat." Lucy looked up at Ms. Lane, nodding once. "She's had to do it before," she said softly. Ms. Lane's curiosity piqued, but she chose not to press further. She could see a hint of sorrow in Lucy's eyes, the kind that develops when a child has seen more hardship than she should. It only reaffirmed Ms. Lane's admiration for Anna Carter's efforts to build a secure life here. As they stepped out into the dusty street, the late afternoon sun cast orange rays across the town's modest skyline. Preparations needed to be swift and thorough. Everyone sensed that a storm was coming, a storm of gunfire and violence that would test the mettle of Stillwater Falls. And at the eye of that storm would be Anna Carter, a quiet widow whose true skill with a revolver was about to be revealed to all. Evening settled over Stillwater Falls with a sense of anticipation bordering on dread. People worked by lantern light, reinforcing doors and windows. Families gathered supplies into wagons, just in case the fighting spilled into the main street. Sheriff Finnegan made rounds instructing volunteers on how to relay signals. At the Mercantile, Luther Jenkins distributed ammunition carefully. Each person allowed only what he or she could reasonably handle. At the Carter homestead, Anna and Lucy completed their own final checks. The newly mended roof and sturdy walls offered some comfort, yet Anna knew she couldn't rely solely on fortifications. She walked around the perimeter, scanning the horizon for silhouettes that might signal scouts, verifying that the tripwires and small bells she'd placed at strategic points were still intact. Lucy followed, carrying a small coil of rope that Anna had asked her to hold. Whenever Anna paused to adjust or tighten a wire, Lucy handed her the rope as if part of a well-practiced dance. Once they finished the perimeter, Anna led her daughter inside. The trunk lay open, revealing that custom revolver nestled beside a worn leather-bound book of notes and clippings. Anna lifted the gun and placed it into a holster she'd strapped around her waist. She also checked a secondary firearm, an older single-action pistol that Lucy could operate in an emergency. Anna prayed it would never come to that. "Lucy," she said, turning serious eyes on her daughter, "if you see strangers or if anything happens that splits us up, you remember what we practiced, right?" Lucy swallowed, nodding. "I remember. Take cover behind the big oak, then move toward the old creek bed if you're not back within the count of 300. "And what do you do if I'm still not there?" She hesitated, looking at her mother. I ride to Miss Lane in town with the emergency letter. And if Miss Lane isn't there, I take it to Sheriff Finnegan. Anna nodded with gentle approval. She hated placing such burdens on her child, but the frontier rarely granted innocence for long. Hopefully we won't need that plan, she said, ushering Lucy toward the small loft that served as the child's sleeping area. Now get some rest if you can. The hush of the desert night settled around them. Time seemed to slow, each heartbeat a reminder of the threats lurking out there. Jackson Hastings, Everett Hastings, Jonas Hastings, and perhaps others aligned with them. Anna set a chair by the window, her revolver resting on a small table, and listened to Lucy's soft breathing as the girl drifted off to sleep. In the stillness, Anna's mind wandered back to the day the illusions of her old life had shattered, the day her husband was taken from her by ruthless men. Since that day, she had worn different masks, traveled under assumed names, honed her shooting skills not for show, but for retribution. The sorrow that had once nearly drowned her had since transformed into steely resolve. Outside, the stars spread across the sky in dazzling clarity. The cactus-studded horizon might have seemed peaceful to any casual observer, but Anna Carter felt the tension coiling in the darkness. The Hastings brothers were coming, sooner or later, and when they did, she would stand between them and her daughter, between them and the life she had fought so hard to build. There in the quiet glow of lamplight, Anna promised herself she would never again be the victim of ruthless men. Tomorrow, or the day after, or whenever the Hastings arrived, they would finally learn why people once whispered the name Quicksilver Carter with awe and fear. The sun rose over Stillwater Falls, illuminating a community braced for battle yet striving for normalcy. Children still filed into Miss Nichols' schoolhouse, albeit with nervous glances over their shoulders. The blacksmith hammered away at horseshoes but kept a loaded rifle within arm's reach. Shop doors opened, though patrons arrived in cautious trickles, and across it all, the whisper of the Hastings brothers lingered like a warning carried by the wind. After checking on Lucy, Anna Carter rode into town that morning to see if any fresh news had arrived by telegraph. At the small telegraph office, a harried operator handed her a copy of a telegram from a federal marshal named Robert Granger, stationed over 100 miles away. The message was brief. Hastings reported near Tucson. Large robbery attempt. Some members heading your direction. Exercise extreme caution. The mention of a large robbery attempt rattled Anna. She pocketed the telegram and stepped onto the dusty main street, scanning the row of buildings with a critical eye. It would take only a handful of determined outlaws to turn this quiet settlement into a bloodbath. The bank was little more than a safe and a backroom office, but the Hastings weren't always about money. Sometimes they terrorized small towns simply to prove they could. She encountered Sheriff Finnegan in front of the mercantile. He studied her expression and guessed the telegram's contents before she even spoke. "They're still out there," he said heavily. "We might have a day or two if they're coming from Tucson, or they might be a day away if they took a shortcut we don't know about." Anna nodded. "We can't maintain a permanent state of alert without wearing folks down, but we can set an early warning system." So they set about establishing watchers on rotating shifts. A watch atop the church steeple with a spyglass, another stationed at the water tower behind the livery. Any sign of riders on the horizon would be reported by a specific bell code. 2 short rings, a pause, then 2 more. Meanwhile, Anna quietly inspected vantage points. Roofs, the blacksmith's walkway, and even the old orchard near the boarding house, calculating firing lines in her mind. Lucy, for her part, stayed in school that day. She walked with a new friend, Carrie Edwards, discussing arithmetic homework as they strolled past the row of shops. But Lucy's eyes flicked now and then to the rooftops, noticing watchers posted. She recognized her mother's hand in these precautions and silently felt reassured. If Lucy was afraid, she kept it to herself. She had grown used to living in a world where danger might come around any corner. And if trouble did arrive, she had faith in her mother's unerring aim. As the day wore on, no strangers appeared. The watchers rotated uneventfully. When night fell, the townsfolk exhaled a collective sigh, though no one truly relaxed. Lantern lights glimmered from windows well into the late hours, while men with rifles paced slowly in the street. Anna returned to the homestead with Lucy, the weight of her revolver ever present at her hip. Tonight, as she settled Lucy into bed, the air felt unnaturally still, as though the desert itself was waiting. Anna whispered a silent prayer that they might have one more peaceful night. The next morning brought a streak of clouds across the pale sky, a slight breeze rustling the mesquite trees. Anna rose early, intending to ride west and check a few vantage points on higher ground. She hoped to spot any dust trails that might signal a group of riders approaching. Lucy wanted to join, but Anna gently insisted she stay behind. "I need you to help Miss Lane with her errands in town," she told her daughter. "We can't leave the boarding house short-handed if folks are feeling scared." Lucy, though disappointed, understood. Anna set off, her horse's hooves thudding softly on the packed earth. She followed a winding track through the desert, heading for the ridges that overlooked the valley. The land was silent except for the call of a distant hawk. The horizon remained empty. No swirling dust that might herald a band of riders. After an hour of surveying, she concluded that if the Hastings brothers were coming, they hadn't arrived in this sector yet. Just as she was about to turn back, her horse snorted nervously. Anna tensed, scanning her surroundings. From behind a scraggly stand of Joshua trees, a single rider emerged. He wore a dusty hat and carried a shotgun across his lap. Anna's hand inched toward her revolver. "Howdy," he called, halting at a cautious distance. He wore no badge, and the lines on his face hinted at a life under the sun, perhaps a rancher or traveling wrangler. His tone was guarded. "Mind if I ask if Stillwater Falls is up ahead?" Anna studied him for signs of deception. She saw no immediate threat beyond the fact that in these parts, any stranger could be dangerous. "That's right," she said quietly. "It's about a mile that way." He nodded, reining his horse to the side. "I was sent by a federal marshal. Name's Hank Rowland. Heard there might be trouble brewing with the Hastings brothers." At this revelation, Anna relaxed slightly, though she remained cautious. "I've heard about potential trouble, yes." Rowland frowned, glancing at the horizon. "Marshal Granger said to check on the town's defenses. He's worried the Hastings are massing a bigger crew." Then he gave her a sidelong look. "You a resident there?" Anna nodded. "Name's Anna Carter. My daughter and I live a ways outside town." She studied his expression, searching for signs of guile. "You riding alone?" Rowland grimaced. "Supposed to meet a partner, but we got separated. Could be they got held up. I'm heading into town to talk to your sheriff, get a sense of the situation." Reluctantly, Anna decided to guide him. She figured if this man was genuine, the sheriff could verify his credentials. If he was trouble, better to keep him where she could see him. They rode together in uneasy silence. Rowland tried to make conversation, describing how Marshal Granger had sent out a few scouts to gauge local town's readiness. Anna offered minimal replies, focusing on any movement that might betray an ambush. At the outskirts of Stillwater Falls, she turned to Rowland with a final warning. "Our people are on edge. Don't ride too fast into town. They might mistake you for an enemy." Rowland nodded and slowed his horse. Anna raised a hand in signal to the watchman perched on top of the livery stable. Moments later, Sheriff Finnegan appeared, strolling toward them with rifle in hand. The tension in the air was palpable, but for now no one fired a shot. Another new arrival had made his way into the precarious puzzle that was Stillwater Falls. Sheriff Finnegan greeted Hank Rowland with a mixture of suspicion and relief. Any ally against the Hastings brothers could be invaluable, but false pretenses were common among outlaws. The two men stepped into Finnegan's office to talk in private, while Anna discreetly took up a position near the window, close enough to intervene if matters turned sour. Lucy, who had been helping Ms. Lane at the boarding house, soon arrived with a tray of coffee cups. She lingered by her mother's side, her alert eyes watching the newcomer. Rowland recounted how the federal marshal had dispatched him to check on frontier towns, rumored to be in the Hastings brothers' path. "We've heard they're traveling in groups of 3 or 4, so they don't draw too much attention," Rowland said. "Then they reconvene at a predetermined site before hitting a target." Finnegan frowned deeply. "So we could be dealing with multiple small scouting parties out there, gathering intel." Anna caught a flicker of understanding in Lucy's expression. They both knew such tactics well. Small detachments scanning for vulnerabilities. Just like her own approach to hunting outlaws in the past. Lucy set down the tray carefully, then stepped outside, leaving the adults to continue. Rowland took a sip of the black coffee and nodded in approval. "If they strike, they'll try to cripple your defenses first. Maybe pick off watchers. If they bring enough guns, they can overrun a place like Stillwater Falls. Anna moved closer, arms folded. We won't make it easy for them. Her tone was quiet but resolute. Roland studied her. You a deputy here? Finnegan intervened with a faint smile. Not officially, but Ms. Carter has proven instrumental in organizing our defenses. Rather than press, Roland seemed to accept the explanation. He returned his focus to the sheriff. Marshal Granger is about 50 miles west. He's trying to rally more lawmen, but he might not get here in time if Hastings decides to move quickly. Outside, the midday heat intensified. Lucy walked aimlessly around the sheriff's office, occasionally glimpsing men posted on rooftops. She recognized that even with the best planning, they were still heavily outmatched if the Hastings brothers arrived with significant numbers. Inside, Anna took a map from Finnegan's desk, a rudimentary layout of Stillwater Falls and its surrounding homesteads. She pointed to roads and potential choke points, speaking with the certainty of someone who had plotted these details in her mind long before. Roland listened intently, occasionally asking a question. Finnegan observed the dynamic, increasingly convinced that Anna's knowledge wasn't simply gleaned from local gossip. She had the aura of a strategist. Finally, Roland stood, adjusting his hat. I'll send a writer to notify Marshal Granger about your defenses. In the meantime, I can stick around, lend a hand if the Hastings show up. Finnegan nodded. We'd appreciate the help. Anna, however, remained cautious. Allies sometimes came with hidden motives, and trust was a scarce commodity in these parts. Still, for now, Hank Roland seemed a genuine enough man who might bolster their chances. As Lucy peeked in from the doorway, Anna gave her a slight nod of reassurance. They had new allies, new knowledge, but the threat still loomed large. Every hour that passed without the Hastings brothers' arrival made the tension coil tighter, like a rattlesnake prepared to strike. Paragraph 4, approx. 590 words. By late afternoon, the sky had darkened with storm clouds, a rarity that time of year. Thunder rumbled in the distance as a warm wind blew through Stillwater Falls, rattling shutters and carrying the scent of impending rain. Some townsfolk welcomed the possibility of water for their parched gardens. Others worried that a storm might mask the approach of attackers. Anna guided Lucy back to the homestead, leaving Hank Roland with Finnegan to finalize watch schedules. The air felt electric, and Lucy cast wary glances at the sky. Think it'll really storm? She asked. Feels like it, Anna replied, scanning the horizon. Better get home before it breaks. At the cabin, they hastened to secure loose items, tying down the chicken coop and covering the half-full water barrels. Lucy stood by the small vegetable patch they had been painstakingly cultivating. The seedlings trembled in the wind, but Lucy shielded them with an improvised barrier of planks. Her mother gave an approving nod. Even a small patch of produce could be critical on the frontier. When the first fat drops of rain fell, they moved inside. Anna lit a lamp, preparing to make a simple supper. Lucy, holding a tin cup, watched as the droplets pattered against the window. I hope this won't keep the watchers from seeing anything, she murmured. Anna set a bowl of beans on the table. The watchers are vigilant. Rain or shine, they'll keep an eye out. She hesitated, then added softly, we have to trust them and trust ourselves. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the interior of the cabin. For a second, Anna's reflection in the window looked almost like a ghost, her features sharpened by the glare. Lucy caught her mother's gaze and sensed the unspoken question weighing on her. Are we truly safe here? As they ate, the storm intensified. Wind whipped around the cabin, and thunder shook the walls. Lucy studied the single window, half expecting to see silhouettes of riders in the storm, but the gray swirl of rain and darkness obscured everything beyond a few yards. Anna's posture remained tense, her ears attuned to any sound that didn't fit the storm's rhythm. Eventually, Lucy grew tired. She retreated to her loft, wrapping herself in a quilt. Anna remained below, reading by lamplight. Every so often, she flipped through her leather-bound journal, checking notes on the Hastings brothers, cross-referencing their known hideouts and the times they'd struck before. Always they favored decisive, overwhelming assaults. They were not subtle men. A faint bruise of apprehension formed in Anna's thoughts. Could this storm serve as the perfect cloak for the Hastings to advance? Suddenly, the wind battered the door so hard it rattled the latch. Anna sprang up, revolver in hand. Heart pounding, she listened intently. Another bang on the door, and a voice called out above the howling wind. "Ms. Carter! It's Hank Rowland!" Relief and suspicion warred within her. She unlatched the door cautiously, letting Rowland stumble in, drenched from head to foot. His horse nickered and stomped outside as if in protest of the tempest. "Ma'am, sorry to barge in," Rowland panted, water streaming from his hat brim. "I tried the boarding house, but Ms. Lane said you were out here. I've got news, bad news." Anna shut the door and beckoned for him to take off his soaked coat. Lucy, woken by the ruckus, peered over the loft's edge with wide eyes. Through the flicker of lamplight, Rowland's face was pale, a mixture of exhaustion and alarm. "What is it?" Anna demanded, fighting the swirl of dread in her stomach. Rowland exhaled shakily. "We intercepted a message. Seems the Hastings brothers might already have a foothold near the town. Their men were spotted at an abandoned ranch a few miles west. They could be planning to hit us tonight, or as soon as the storm passes." For a moment, no one spoke. Rain drummed on the roof, lightning flared, and Lucy swallowed hard. Anna squared her shoulders, the weight of her revolver suddenly heavier at her side. "All right," she said, voice steady. "Then we make sure they regret coming here." Roused by Rowland's news, Anna quickly readied the cabin for possible siege. She doused the lamp to avoid drawing attention, leaving only the faint glow of embers in the fireplace. Lucy helped gather essentials: bandages, a small stash of bullets, and a canteen of water, while Rowland wrung out his clothes, occasionally peering through the window into the storm-lashed darkness. Lightning revealed fleeting snapshots of the landscape: a twisted mesquite tree, the wet glimmer of the newly reinforced fences, the faint silhouettes of rocky foothills beyond. Anna took advantage of each flash, scanning for movement. The tension in the room was palpable. There was no guarantee the Hastings brothers would move in the middle of such a storm, but Anna refused to be caught off guard. "Where's the sheriff?" she asked Rowland quietly. "He's in town, coordinating watchers. He told me to warn you personally, since your homestead is on the west side. If the Hastings come from that direction—" Rowland paused, letting the implication hang. He glanced at Lucy. "Didn't mean to frighten the young one." Lucy stood as tall as her small frame allowed. "I'm not frightened," she said, though Anna could see her daughter's knuckles tighten on the canteen. Anna gave Lucy a quick nod of respect before addressing Rowland. "We need to decide if it's safer to keep Lucy here or take her into town." Rowland hesitated, exchanging a look with Anna. He saw the unwavering confidence in her eyes, the same look she had in the sheriff's office when discussing defensive plans. "If you want to move her to the boarding house, now's the only window," he said. "Once the storm lets up, there's a risk of running into Hastings' men on the road." Anna mulled it over, gazing at Lucy. They could all ride back into town together, but that might leave their homestead undefended. Or she could send Lucy alone with Rowland, but trusting a near stranger with her daughter's safety wasn't easy. Another choice was to remain put. The cabin had been reinforced, and from here, Anna could guard the approach to Stillwater Falls from the west. Lucy quietly offered her thoughts. "This is our home. You always said we shouldn't let bad men chase us away." Anna felt a pinch in her heart. Her daughter's words echoed her own sentiments. And though she wanted Lucy safe, she also recognized that Lucy had learned to handle herself. "We'll stay," Anna decided, returning her attention to Rowland. "But I need you to ride back to town and tell the sheriff we're alert. If he sees anything, we'll need a signal." Rowland nodded, though worry flickered across his features. "I'll do that. Just be careful. And if you see any sign of them, fire a shot. One shot, wait a moment, then a second. We'll know to come running." Moments later, Rowland braced himself against the howling wind and dashed out to his horse. Lucy watched from the doorway, eyes filled with determination. Anna closed and locked the door behind him. They stood in silence, mother and daughter united by a quiet resolve. Neither spoke their fears aloud, but each understood the reality. If the Hastings brothers truly waited for the storm's lull, the Carter homestead could become the first battleground. Anna's mind spun with tactics: vantage points, firing lines, the advantage of surprise. With Lucy's help, she began rearranging furniture, creating a makeshift barricade at the windows. They set lanterns in positions to confuse an attacker who tried to target them by muzzle flash. By the time they finished, sweat mingled with the dampness of the storm's humidity. Outside, the rain finally began to subside, replaced by an eerie stillness. And in that hush, Anna Carter knew the real storm was yet to come. Hours crept by in tense vigil. Through the shuttered windows, the moon gradually emerged from behind tattered clouds, casting a pale glow across the muddy yard. The hush of the night seeped into the cabin, broken only by the distant drip of water from the eaves. Lucy dozed in a rocking chair near the hearth, while Anna kept her stance by the window, peering out whenever the moonlight offered enough illumination. When a faint sound reached her ears, like the clop of hooves carefully maneuvered, she stiffened. Adrenaline surged through her veins. She gently shook Lucy awake, pressing a finger to her lips. With slow, deliberate movements, Anna lifted her revolver and positioned Lucy behind a low bookshelf that served as cover. A silhouette appeared near the fence line. One rider, possibly dismounted now, because Anna heard the scuff of boots on wet ground. Then another shape moved in the periphery. Her heart hammered. If these were outlaws, they were approaching with caution, which meant they were competent. Could it be the Hastings themselves? A deep voice hissed through the darkness, too low for Anna to make out words. Then the crunch of the fence being tested. She saw a faint glimmer of metal in the moonlight, perhaps a rifle barrel. Anna breathed slowly, recalling her training. Calm mind, steady hand, precise aim. Without warning, a man vaulted the fence and crept toward the side of the cabin. Another figure followed. Anna kept her gun barrel steady, counting the seconds. Wait until they commit, she told herself. The old tension from her days of exhibition shooting returned, that razor-sharp focus that made everything else fade. Only her target remained. A loud crack shattered the silence. The outlaws had triggered one of her tripwire alarms near the corner of the cabin. Bells clattered, a jarring metallic crash. Panicked cursing erupted outside. Anna seized the moment, flinging the shutters open. By moonlight, she saw two men scrabbling to find cover. She recognized neither, but that mattered little. They were intruders on her land, armed and likely part of the Hastings gang. She fired. The muzzle flash lit the yard as one intruder dropped to a knee, clutching his shoulder. The other returned fire, bullets thudding into the cabin's reinforced walls. Lucy ducked lower behind the shelf, hands over her ears. Anna ejected a spent casing and aimed again, cursing the limited vantage. She needed to shift positions. In the confusion, more shots rang out from behind the barn. Splinters erupted from the window frame. Anna dropped to the floor, motioning for Lucy to follow her toward the back door. She'd installed a small peephole there for exactly this contingency, enabling her to see the barn's approach. Through the peephole, Anna spotted another figure lurking between the barn and the chicken coop. He carried a short-barreled shotgun and was scanning the cabin, searching for an easy entry. Anna's pulse hammered in her ears. She exhaled softly, aimed through a narrow gap, and squeezed the trigger. The shotgun clattered to the mud. The man behind it stumbled with a guttural cry, clutching his arm. "Lucy!" Anna hissed, beckoning her daughter to keep low. They needed a better vantage, somewhere that gave Anna a line of sight to all angles of the yard. "Upstairs loft," she whispered. They crept up the short ladder to the loft, pushing the single window open just enough to poke her revolver barrel through. The vantage here was better. Anna could see 3 men total. One was wounded near the fence, another cursing behind the barn, and the third presumably the one who lost his shotgun. She had no clear sign of the Hastings brothers themselves. This is too orchestrated for random thieves, she thought grimly. They're making a foothold for the bigger assault. Lightning flickered far off, revealing the scowls on the men's faces. Gunpowder smoke hung in the damp air. Lucy pressed her back against the loft's wall, eyes wide but steady. Anna took careful aim at the man near the fence. She refused to let fear control her. Once more, her finger squeezed the trigger, plunging them deeper into the maelstrom of violence that had finally reached Stillwater Falls. In the flickering moonlight, the clash at the Carter homestead intensified. The wounded intruder near the fence managed to crawl behind a trough, returning sporadic fire. His accomplice behind the barn yelled curses that the wind snatched away. Anna felt every muscle in her body coiled, ready. Her revolver barked again. Sparks illuminated her face for a split second. She saw a bullet tear through the barn door, missing the hidden outlaw by inches. Lucy crouched behind her mother, tensed at each concussion. Yet she never cried out. In the silence between shots, Anna heard the distant roll of thunder, perhaps the storm circling back. or perhaps just the sky's echo of the violence below. She took a moment to reload, hands steady despite the adrenaline. A sudden movement near the front fence caught her eye. Someone new arrived, a rider who dismounted swiftly. In the pale light, Anna glimpsed an all-too-familiar scar across his jaw. Jackson Hastings. She felt a jolt of recognition. It was as if a piece of a nightmare had materialized in front of her. He barked orders at the other men. "Keep her pinned! We need to flush her out or burn her out!" A chill snaked through Anna's spine. Fire would be devastating. The wooden cabin might survive a few well-placed bullets, but flames would consume it in minutes. She had to act. Signaling Lucy to stay put, Anna crawled to a narrow opening in the loft side wall. She'd built it as a ventilation slot, but it served a second purpose tonight. She could see Jackson Hastings rummaging in his saddlebag, possibly for oil or something flammable. Steadying her breath, she aimed through the slot, determined to end the threat now. Hastings stepped out from behind his horse, presenting a shot. Anna aligned her sights, exhaled, and fired. The bullet clipped the edge of Hastings' saddle, spooking the horse, which reared and nearly trampled him. He stumbled, swearing loudly. She'd missed him by inches. Lightning quick, Hastings took cover behind a low stone wall. He retaliated, unleashing a barrage of shots that cracked the boards of the loft's exterior. Anna shielded Lucy as splinters rained down. Her mind raced. We can't hold them off forever. The rest of the gang might be on their way. Just then, the sound of distant gunfire echoed from the south. Another staccato of shots, followed by the faint ring of metal on metal. Anna's heart leapt. That had to be Sheriff Finnegan and Hank Rowland responding. Maybe they'd encountered Hastings' reinforcements. The thought brought both relief and anxiety. If Hastings had more men, this was merely the opening skirmish, but help was still too far away for comfort. Anna shouted through the loft window, her voice laden with the authority honed over years of fighting. "Hastings, this is Anna Carter. You step off my land, or I'll bury you here." A fierce laugh echoed from behind the stone wall. "So you're the famed Quicksilver Carter, huh? I heard tell of you," Jackson called back, his voice mocking. "They said you outshot men for a living, that you were once a big star. Let's see if you're still a star when you're dead." Anna's blood ran cold. Her identity was out. She had spent so much time trying to keep her past a secret. But Hastings' words confirmed he knew exactly who she was. That meant there would be no negotiation, no mercy. Outside, one of Hastings' goons tried to flank the cabin. Anna twisted and fired a snapshot, catching the man in the leg. He collapsed with a howl. The tension escalated. Even Lucy, from her vantage behind the loft's crates, realized the gravity of hearing Quicksilver Carter shouted into the night. It was no longer a question of if the town would learn Anna's secret. The question was whether mother and daughter would survive long enough to face the aftermath. Despite her grit and the defenses she'd built, Anna understood that the four men outside could eventually overwhelm her if they coordinated properly. She had to keep them off balance. From her vantage in the loft, she scanned the yard for an opportunity. One man was crawling behind the trough, still pinned by his wound. Another lay near the barn, likely incapacitated. That left Hastings and at least one more underling, possibly the one rummaging near the barn's rear door. She motioned for Lucy to hold her position, then descended the loft ladder with careful steps. "Mom," Lucy whispered, eyes wide. "Cover me from here," Anna instructed in a low, calm voice. "If you see them come around the side, fire a warning shot. That's all." Lucy swallowed and nodded, grasping the older single-action revolver Anna had left for her. The child's knuckles whitened around the grip. Anna gave her a final reassuring squeeze on the shoulder. Then she slipped out the back door, moving with the silent caution of a practiced scout. The night was surreal. Moonlight made everything starkly black and white. The air smelled of damp earth and gunpowder. She crouched behind a water barrel, mentally mapping each attacker's position. The man behind the trough was groaning in pain. The one near the barn had gone silent, possibly dead or unconscious. Jackson Hastings was behind the stone wall, muttering curses about the horse that nearly crushed him. The final man, presumably the one near the barn's rear, was out of her line of sight. Anna crept around the side of the cabin, silent as a ghost. Her revolver was ready, every sense tuned to the slightest movement. She circled toward the barn, intending to neutralize the hidden threat. A shape darted from behind the barn, heading toward the stable fence. She recognized him from earlier. Medium build, scruffy beard, holding a rifle. He hadn't noticed her yet. Stealth was no longer an option. Anna pivoted, aimed, and pulled the trigger. A bright flash, a crack of thunder-like sound. The man yelped, the rifle clattering to the mud. He raised his hands, whimpering, "Don't shoot! I surrender!" Anna advanced, gun leveled. "Get on the ground," she commanded. He obeyed, lying face down, arms extended. She deftly kicked the rifle away. If he was truly surrendering, it meant he saw no chance of victory. One less threat, she thought grimly. Movement behind her. A warning shout from Lucy in the loft. Anna spun to see Jackson Hastings charging, revolver spitting fire in her direction. She dove behind a rain barrel, bullets whizzing overhead. One tore into her shoulder with a burning sting. She hissed in pain, adrenaline surging. Hastings let out a triumphant roar, advancing. "You can't hide forever, Quicksilver," he taunted, the hatred in his voice thick as venom. "I'll teach you what happens when you humiliate my family." His reference to family sent a chill through Anna. He was here for more than just a kill. This was personal. She pressed a hand to her shoulder, feeling the warm seep of blood. Her vision blurred momentarily, but she forced herself to focus. She popped up, fired twice. One shot ricocheted off the stone wall, the other clipped Hastings' thigh. He staggered, growling in fury and pain. But he didn't drop. He fired back wildly, forcing Anna to duck as muzzle flashes lit the night. Lucy's frightened call echoed from the loft window, mingling with the swirling intensity of the firefight. For a split second, Anna locked eyes with Hastings, scarred, enraged, determined. They both knew only one would leave this yard alive. With her shoulder stinging and blood staining her sleeve, Anna pressed herself flat against the barn's outer wall. The reek of damp hay and gunpowder hung in the air. A hush fell, broken only by the ragged breathing of wounded men and Lucy's muffled cries from the lofts. Anna clenched her jaw, refusing to show weakness. Jackson Hastings was close, but behind cover. She could hear him reloading, the dull click of cartridges sliding into chambers. He was wounded in the thigh, but that wouldn't stop him from fighting. Adrenaline fueled both of them now. A faint scuffling sound alerted Anna that Hastings was circling the barn to her left. She moved right, staying in step, determined not to let him flank her. Her mind spun through possibilities. She could lead him away from the cabin, but that might isolate Lucy if any other outlaws recovered. Alternatively, she could attempt an all-or-nothing confrontation right here. She heard Lucy's voice again, calling her name, anxiety thick in the young girl's tone. That decided it. Anna wouldn't stray far from the cabin. She crouched behind a half-broken cart near the barn's entrance, revolver braced. Another flicker of lightning from distant clouds offered the slightest illumination. She glimpsed the scuffed toe of Hastings' boot on the other side of the cart. He was near enough that she heard his labored breathing. He made a sudden lunge, attempting to shoot beneath the cart. Bullets whizzed past, splintering the wooden spokes. Anna rolled to the side, returning fire. One shot hammered into the cart frame inches from Hastings' face. He recoiled, and Anna saw her moment. She rose to a knee, took aim at his silhouette, and squeezed the trigger. Click. The revolver was empty. Horror filled her chest, a split second of vulnerability. Hastings realized it too. With a snarling grin, he leveled his revolver. Time slowed to a sickening crawl. Anna scrambled to reload, but her wounded shoulder throbbed, every movement excruciating. She couldn't possibly outrun his bullet. Then a muzzle flash from above illuminated the yard. A single gunshot cracked the darkness. Hastings' revolver jerked upward, the bullet going wide. Anna seized the precious instant to snap the cylinder, closed on her own revolver. She fired twice in rapid succession. The first shot slammed into Hastings' chest. The second found his throat. He staggered, choking on blood, eyes wide in disbelief. For a heartbeat, he tried to speak, his lips forming silent curses. Then he crumpled to the mud, the brash arrogance that fueled him draining into the earth. Above, Lucy's quivering voice called out, "Mom!" She had taken that timely shot, though her marksmanship had only managed to jostle Hastings' arm. Still, it made the difference between Anna's life and certain death. Anna felt tears of relief mixed with the rain still trickling from the eaves. Before she could respond, the yard lit with a sudden glow. Lanterns. Multiple riders approached, led by Sheriff Finnegan and Hank Rowland. They thundered into the homestead, rifles and shotguns at the ready. Finnegan's eyes darted between the wounded men on the ground, the battered barn, and Anna's bloodied form. Rowland hopped down first, checking the bodies for signs of life. Finnegan dismounted, rushing to Anna's side. "My God," he muttered, taking in the wound on her shoulder. "We came as soon as we heard the shots. Are you—" "I'm fine," Anna managed, though her voice wavered with exhaustion. "Lucy's in the loft. She's safe." Finnegan gave a relieved nod, then barked orders for the other men to secure the prisoners, who still clung to life. Meanwhile, Anna limped toward the cabin, ignoring the throbbing pain. Lucy met her at the doorway, tears tracking down her cheeks. Anna gathered her daughter into a careful embrace, relief coursing through her. They had survived. As for Jackson Hastings, he lay in the mud, eyes glassy, body still. Sheriff Finnegan approached and removed the revolver from the outlaw's stiffening hand. The reign of at least one Hastings brother had ended in the yard of the Carter homestead, courtesy of a mother who refused to be cowed and a daughter who had the courage to pull a trigger in defense of the only home she'd ever truly known. Dawn painted the sky with subdued pinks and oranges, revealing the aftermath of the battle at the Carter homestead. The bodies of Hastings' henchmen had been removed, some under guard at the sheriff's office, others taken by local ranchers for burial. A subdued hush fell over the property as men in wide-brimmed hats stood around with rifles slung over their shoulders, murmuring about the events of the night. Lucy sat on a small stool by the hearth, swaddled in a blanket. The shock of what she had done, firing that critical shot, settled in. Her small hands trembled whenever she replayed the moment in her mind. Ms. Lane had arrived at first light, bringing warm tea and hushed reassurance. She placed a gentle hand on Lucy's shoulder, telling her she was brave, that she'd done what was necessary to save her mother. Lucy nodded, but tears lingered at the corners of her eyes. Anna, her arm bandaged, conversed with Sheriff Emmett Finnegan and Hank Rowland in low tones near the barn. The sheriff had insisted a local doctor come and examine Anna's wound. While it wasn't fatal, the bullet lodged painfully in her shoulder, requiring careful extraction. For the moment, the pain was dulled by laudanum, leaving Anna's head swimming with fatigue. Yet she pressed on, determined to share crucial information with Finnegan and Rowland. She explained her suspicions, that Jackson Hastings was only part of the threat. The other Hastings brothers, Everett and Jonas, remained at large. "They may already be on their way, or they could regroup when they hear about Jackson's death," she said, voice tight. "We have to warn the town." Finnegan nodded gravely. "We'll send out riders. If Everett or Jonas tries to approach, we'll be ready." Hank Rowland studied Anna, finally voicing the question that hovered unspoken. "You're Quicksilver Carter, aren't you? The traveling sharpshooter who vanished years ago after some tragedy." Anna's gaze dropped. The time for secrets had passed. She gave a small nod. "Yes, that was my stage name. I left that life behind." Rowland glanced at the bloodstains on the barn wall and the bullet holes in the cabin door. "Some might say it followed you here." Anna exhaled, leaning against the barn for support. "I hope to give my daughter a chance at a normal life." But the Hastings had other plans. Finnegan placed a reassuring hand on her good shoulder. "No one here is judging you, Anna. You've done more to protect Stillwater Falls than anyone. Besides, we need all the skill we can get against men like the Hastings brothers." Anna blinked back tears of pain and relief, the laudanum making her vision blur. "I'll help in any way I can," she murmured. "But Lucy, she's my priority." At that, Ms. Lane appeared by her side, having overheard. "Lucy will be safe in town. She can stay at the boarding house until your shoulder heals." Anna nodded gratefully. She glanced across the yard at Lucy, who was huddled by the fireplace inside, still reeling from the night's violence. Anna's heart twisted. She had never wanted her daughter to face such a situation. Yet Lucy's actions had saved her life. They were bound by a shared experience of survival now, a bond that included the burden of knowing Lucy had fired a weapon at another human being. "There's more," Finnegan said, eyeing the rising sun. "We found letters on Jackson's body, They indicate he was communicating with Everett and Jonas. The letters suggest they aimed to raid Stillwater Falls as revenge for old grudges and for the bounty money in the bank, meager though it is. Anna stiffened. Then this isn't over? No, Finnegan agreed. But you've given us a fighting chance. Though the morning light brought temporary relief, everyone sensed that a larger reckoning lay ahead. With Jackson Hastings dead, the other Hastings brothers would be enraged. And if they found out that Quicksilver Carter was the one who pulled the trigger, they'd come with vengeance in mind, meaning the true storm had yet to break over Stillwater Falls. In the days that followed Jackson Hastings' death, Stillwater Falls found itself in a strange limbo, part triumph, part dread. On one hand, the immediate threat that had loomed over the Carter homestead was neutralized, and rumors spread that Anna Carter, better known by her old stage name, Quicksilver Carter, had single-handedly bested the notorious outlaw. On the other hand, the knowledge that Everett and Jonas Hastings were still at large cast a long shadow. Their reprisals were not a matter of if, but when. The morning after the skirmish, Anna awoke in a small cot set up in Ms. Lane's boarding house. The town doctor, a wiry man named Dr. Beckett, had removed the bullet from her shoulder and stitched the wound. He administered laudanum for the pain, which left her groggy but functional. Anna wanted desperately to return to the homestead, but Finnegan and Miss Lane insisted she heal in town, closer to medical help should infection set in. Lucy, too, remained at the boarding house, subdued and introspective. People whispered in corridors and on street corners about the confrontation. Some repeated stories of how Anna once performed trick shots in traveling shows, how she could split a playing card edge-on from 30 paces. Others spoke of Lucy's bravery, a child forced into the role of a guardian. The attention made Lucy uncomfortable. She kept mostly to herself, reading in the parlor while Anna rested. Sheriff Emmett Finnegan convened a council meeting at the church, urging townsfolk to complete any last-minute fortifications. Hank Rowland offered to ride to the nearest cavalry outpost to request additional soldiers, but the outcome of that errand was uncertain. The outpost was understaffed and often preoccupied with other frontier disputes. Meanwhile, ranchers volunteered to form scouting parties, hoping to intercept Everett and Jonas if they approached. Despite the hustle of the day, an undercurrent of tension permeated every conversation. Ms. Lane's guests murmured about moving on to the next town, rather than risk an encounter with the Hastings brothers. A traveling salesman canceled his stay altogether, riding out before dawn. Miss Nichols worried about her school children, scheduling extra drills for what to do if outlaws rode into town. In the midst of it all, Anna Carter's bandaged arm was a constant reminder of the danger that lurked just beyond the horizon. She insisted on being updated hourly about any sightings or suspicious activity. Sheriff Finnegan obliged, though he urged her to rest. You can't hold a rifle properly with that shoulder, he warned. Don't go pushing yourself into another fight while you're half-healed. Anna only half listened, her anxiety focused on Lucy's well-being. Late one afternoon, she found Lucy sitting alone on the wooden porch of the boarding house, looking out at the dusty street. The child's eyes were distant, fixed on nothing in particular. Sweetheart, Anna said softly, settling beside her. You did a brave thing. You saved me. Lucy turned, a shadow in her gaze. I shot at him. What if I had killed him? Anna hesitated, her heart aching. You protected your mother, Lucy. It was him or me. And you didn't kill him. I did. When tears glistened in Lucy's eyes. I was so scared, but I couldn't let you die. Anna pulled her daughter into a gentle hug, mindful of her own stitches. I know, and you did the right thing. They remained there for a time, mother and daughter wrapped in each other's presence, trying to find solace in the small corner of peace they still possessed. Outside, townsfolk continued their preparations, and somewhere beyond the horizon, the Hastings brothers stirred, preparing for vengeance that threatened to tear apart everything Anna and Lucy had fought to protect. It was nearly a week later when the next significant development arrived in the form of a ragged rider just before sunset. Panting and soaked in sweat, he identified himself as a ranch hand from the north. He spoke frantically of men matching Everett Hastings' description: tall, broad shoulders, short black beard, seen gathering supplies at a dilapidated trading post 2 days' ride away. The ranch hand claimed they had about half a dozen armed men with them, though rumors suggested more might be gathering. Sheriff Finnegan assembled a hastily convened meeting that evening under lantern light in the mercantile. Anna, still nursing her wounded shoulder, sat in a chair near the back, Lucy by her side. Hank Rowland stood at the front, next to Finnegan, as the ranch hand repeated the story. Anxious muttering rippled through the crowd of townsfolk. "A half-dozen men is bad enough," said a grizzled rancher. "But if they link up with Jonas Hastings or more outlaws, that's a full-blown army." Luther Jenkins, the mercantile owner, pressed for details. "We have walls, watchers, and signals. But how long can we hold them off if they attack in numbers?" Finnegan exhaled slowly. "That's why we need a new strategy. We can't just sit here waiting for them to come in droves." Hank Rowland agreed. "You have to consider meeting them before they get too close. If they manage to assemble 30 men and corner us here, it'll be a massacre." An uneasy silence settled. Attacking the Hastings brothers on open ground seemed suicidal. Then Anna spoke up, her voice gentle yet firm. "What if we use misinformation to draw them into a disadvantage? Create a decoy so they think the town is weaker than it is." Several pairs of eyes turned to her. Ms. Lane gave an encouraging nod. Finnegan raised an eyebrow. "You have something specific in mind, Anna?" She leaned forward, ignoring the throbbing in her shoulder. "If Everett and Jonas plan to converge on Stillwater Falls, they'll be looking for an easy approach. We can set up a false vulnerability, a stockpile of supplies or valuables they'd want, somewhere they expect minimal resistance. Then we choose the terrain carefully. Use sharpshooters on high ground." A murmur of uncertainty spread. The townspeople were no professional soldiers. But Hank Rowland looked intrigued. "You mean a classic ambush? We lure them in, then cut them down before they can organize?" Anna nodded. "Precisely. It won't stop all of them, but it might break their morale or force them to scatter." Finnegan thought for a moment. "We have an old ranch east of here, abandoned last spring. It has a vantage point from a ridge, perfect for shooters. We could stage something there." At the mention of vantage points, Anna's lips thinned. She'd normally volunteer for such a spot, but her shoulder wounds severely limited her accuracy at long range. She caught Lucy glancing at her with worry. The girl understood the implications. Anna was planning further violence, risking new conflicts. Yet Lucy also knew the alternative was to let the Hastings brothers ride in unchecked, possibly burning Stillwater Falls to the ground. She reached for her mother's hand under the table, giving a slight squeeze. Anna acknowledged it with a gentle nod. "You'll need your best marksman," Anna said, scanning the room. "Sheriff, Hank, any ranchers who can shoot straight. The rest can form perimeter squads to block escapes." Finnegan rubbed his chin. "I can think of a few, but we'll need time to coordinate." "Do it quickly," Anna warned, "because if Everett or Jonas finds out Jackson's dead, they might accelerate their plans." The meeting ended on a tense note, with the outline of a dangerous plan taking shape. Anna stood wincing at the ache in her shoulder, and Lucy supported her gently. People offered hushed thanks for her leadership, but Anna felt no triumph. She felt only the pressure of the days ahead, the knowledge that every moment of rest was borrowed time before the Hastings unleashed their vengeful fury. A restless dusk settled over Stillwater Falls. Plans for the ambush at the abandoned ranch took shape with surprising speed. Sheriff Finnegan selected 5 reliable shooters, 3 ranchers known for culling coyotes at long distances, plus Hank Rowland and himself. They would position themselves atop a rocky outcrop overlooking the old property. Meanwhile, a few volunteers would set up a decoy, some wagons loaded with visible crates to suggest a valuable stash of supplies. Anna spent the next day confined mostly to the boarding house, carefully going over maps and speaking in hushed tones with Finnegan about vantage points. The ache in her shoulder reminded her she wasn't at full strength. The doctor warned her sternly not to strain it, or she might tear the stitches. Yet Anna couldn't stand idle when Lucy's future hung in the balance. She offered strategic tips, referencing her old experiences traveling across the territory for shooting exhibitions. Lucy observed everything quietly, a stoic presence by her mother's side. She understood that Anna felt torn between a mother's instinct to protect her child and the strategist's need to ensure the town's survival. On more than one occasion, Lucy voiced her own concern. But what if the Hastings send half their men here, while the other half flanks the ranch? Anna admitted it was a risk. They could only do their best to anticipate the outlaws' moves. As final preparations were underway, Ms. Lane offered to keep Lucy safe at the boarding house. The building was one of the more secure structures in town, with thick wooden walls and only one door. At first, Lucy argued that she wanted to stay with Anna, but her mother gently insisted. "I can't fight effectively if I'm worried about your safety," Anna said. "Please, Lucy, trust me." With visible reluctance, Lucy agreed. She spent a tearful few minutes with her mother the night before the ambush was set to begin. They stood in a quiet corner of the boarding house parlor, lit by a single kerosene lamp. "Promise me you'll come back," Lucy whispered, her voice catching. Anna's chest tightened. She knelt, ignoring the pain in her shoulder, and cradled Lucy's face in her good hand. "I promise to do everything I can to return to you." That vow lingered in the silence, thick with all the unspoken fears. Lucy nodded, struggling not to cry. She stepped back as Anna turned to leave, accompanied by Hank Rowland, who had come to fetch her. The boarding house door closed behind them, leaving Lucy in a hush that felt unbearably lonely. Outside, the moonless sky enveloped the town. Anna mounted a horse with some difficulty, her bandaged arm protesting every movement. Rowland assisted, and together they rode out to meet Sheriff Finnegan and the rest of the ambush party. In the distance, the shapes of the wagons for the decoy were already moving, rattling along the dusty road east of Stillwater Falls. At the edge of town, they paused. Anna took a final look over her shoulder, her gaze drifting toward the boarding house window, where she knew Lucy watched. A single faint glow emanated from that window. Their eyes never met physically, but Anna felt her daughter's presence as a silent plea to come back in one piece. With a gentle nudge of the reins, she turned away. The hush of the desert night wrapped around them as they headed east toward the abandoned ranch. Every hoofbeat reminded Anna of the bullet that still lodged somewhere deep in her memories. A constant impetus to end the Hastings threat once and for all. Night draped the abandoned ranch in ghostly shadows. The outbuildings stood in disrepair, collapsed roofs, rotted beams, and sagging fences. The owners had left months ago, driven away by drought and debt. Now the place offered a stage for the deadly ruse Sheriff Finnegan, Anna, and Hank Rowland hoped would snare the Hastings brothers. The decoy wagon train settled in by the largest barn, barrels and crates stacked conspicuously. Two ranch hands, each armed with a rifle, played the role of hapless travelers bunking down for the night. Their campfire glimmered, a beacon to any lurking outlaws. Meanwhile, Finnegan's group of 5 sharpshooters quietly took positions on a rugged bluff overlooking the property. In a small ravine behind that bluff, Anna and Rowland sat astride their horses, waiting. Anna's plan was to remain mobile, riding into the fray if the outlaws tried to flee or if they brought too many men for the sharpshooters alone to handle. Cool desert wind brushed Anna's cheeks, stirring memories of simpler nights when she performed at rowdy frontier fairs. She'd shoot targets off barrels to roaring applause, never imagining how that skill would one day become a matter of life and death. Her shoulder still burned, the bandages felt tight, but the pain served as a reminder that she was alive, that Lucy was waiting for her. Rowland, his rifle laid across his lap, broke the tense silence. "Sure you can manage that revolver if things get hairy?" Anna nodded, adjusting the sling that provided partial support to her injured arm. "I'll manage." She heard the skepticism in Rowland's tone, but she also sensed his respect. He'd seen her hold off Jackson Hastings with a single gun and no backup. They waited, eyes and ears attuned to the faintest sound. Occasionally, the night breeze carried distant coyote howls or the low moan of wind across deserted farm structures. In the ravine's gloom, Anna replayed scenarios in her mind. If Everett Hastings arrived with fewer than 10 men, the sharpshooters could take a devastating opening volley from the bluff. If more outlaws appeared, Anna and Rowland would move to cut off their retreat. The ranch hands near the barn would feign panic, drawing the outlaws closer until they were within the kill zone. It was a grim plan, but in a lawless land, such measures sometimes offered the only chance for survival. Hours crawled by. Anna felt the ache in her injured shoulder grow heavier, but she fought to stay alert. Her thoughts drifted to Lucy, alone in Ms. Lane's boarding house, probably too anxious to sleep. Anna thought of their small cabin, the life they'd tried to build, the chance Lucy had to learn in a proper school. All of it hinged on stopping the Hastings brothers here and now. Then near midnight, Rowland stiffened. Riders, he whispered, gesturing toward a faint dust cloud drifting under the silver starlight. Anna narrowed her gaze, straining to see. Sure enough, the silhouettes of mounted figures emerged. More than 4, maybe 6 or 7, possibly more behind them. Her heart thundered. She gripped her revolver, ignoring the pain that shot through her shoulder. The dark shapes approached the barn with caution, presumably drawn by the glow of the campfire. From the bluff above, Finnegan and his men lay still as stones. The ranch hands played their roles perfectly, standing up at the fire, feigning surprise as the riders halted. Anna's eyes flicked over the group. She recognized Everett Hastings' imposing form, a broad-shouldered figure with a short beard. He dismounted, rifle in hand, barking orders. Among the men, one looked disturbingly young, might even be Jonas Hastings. Anna felt a chill. They'd come in moderate force, enough to kill if unopposed, but not enough to suspect a large-scale ambush. We might just have the element of surprise, she thought. She tightened her grip on the reins, adrenaline coursing through her veins. In mere moments, the illusions would shatter. Muzzle flashes would tear the night, and the fate of Stillwater Falls would be decided in the echoes of gunfire. The hush before violence felt like a held breath across the ranch yard. Everett Hastings strode closer to the flickering fire, sizing up the travelers. His men fanned out, scanning the surroundings with experienced caution. One raised a lantern, illuminating the crates and barrels as if verifying the presence of potential loot. From her vantage in the ravine, Anna watched the fluid choreography of outlaws who had done this many times. They'd approach from multiple angles, ensuring no one could surprise them. But tonight, their usual tactics were insufficient. Above them on the bluff, Finnegan and his sharpshooters lay in wait, their rifles aimed. Anna's pulse hammered in her ears. The plan hinged on letting the Hastings men commit to a close inspection of the decoy supplies. A tense minute stretched, thick with anticipation. Then one of the Hastings men moved forward to pry open a crate. That was the sign. A shot cracked the air from the bluff, a muzzle flash painting the hillside. One of the outlaws dropped without a sound. Pandemonium erupted. The ranch hands dove behind the wagon, returning fire. Everett Hastings roared, "Ambush! Fall back!" But falling back was easier said than done. A volley of rifle shots rained down from above, sowing chaos. 3 outlaws lay wounded or dead within seconds. Everett, cursing, dragged one of his men behind a low stone ledge. Jonas Hastings, confirming Anna's suspicions with a single glance, scrambled to mount his horse. Bullets whined off rocks and snapped through the wooden walls of the barn. At that moment, Anna nudged Roland. "We move now," she hissed. They spurred their horses up the side slope, intending to circle behind the outlaws and cut off their escape route. The night turned into a kaleidoscope of muzzle flashes and shouting. Anna's shoulder throbbed with each jolt of the gallop, but she pushed the pain aside. As they crested the ridge, they saw several outlaws managing to remount. Jonas Hastings led 2 men in a desperate dash across the ranch yard, seeking the main trail. Finnegan's sharpshooters switched targets, but the riders had gained ground. Anna and Roland angled their horses to intercept. A furious exchange erupted as the 2 groups converged. Jonas fired a revolver, forcing Anna to swerve. She nearly lost her seat on the saddle when her wounded shoulder wrenched, agony lancing through her. Roland shot one of Jonas's companions off his horse, the man tumbling headfirst into a broken fence. But Jonas himself swung wide, spurring his horse to reckless speed. He aimed at Roland, bullet grazing the man's thigh. Roland cursed, reeling in the saddle. Anna clenched her jaw, raising her revolver with her good arm. She squeezed off 2 shots at Jonas, but the young Hastings brother zigzagged his mount, evading her line of fire. He thundered past, nearly clipping Anna's horse. For a split second, their gazes locked. Jonas's eyes wild with fear and fury, Anna's cold with determination. Then he was gone, vanishing into the darkness. Behind them, the ranch yard was a cacophony of gunfire. Everett Hastings and his remaining men took cover behind wagons, locked in a deadly standoff with Finnegan's party on the bluff. Anna spun her horse, scanning for an opening. If Jonas escaped, he could regroup or return with more men. If Everett remained pinned but alive, the threat continued. Her heart pounded. She had to make a choice: chase Jonas alone or aid in subduing Everett. Roland clutched his bleeding thigh, struggling to keep from falling off his horse. "Go!" he rasped through clenched teeth. "I'll manage." Anna hesitated only a moment before spurring her horse in pursuit of Jonas, the younger Hastings brother who had slipped away. She alone had the skill and the motivation to chase him in the labyrinth of darkness. The echo of gunfire trailed her, and the dusty gloom swallowed her horse's galloping form. This must end tonight, she thought, Lucy's face flashing in her mind. For both of us. Jonas Hastings had gained a 100-yard lead, galloping wildly across the scrubland that rolled east of the ranch. The sky remained moonless, offering scant visibility. Anna pushed her horse to catch up, flinching at every jostle that jarred her injured shoulder. She clenched her teeth against the pain, focusing on the dark shape moving ahead, the sparks of hooves striking occasional rocks. The chase became a deadly game of hide-and-seek through the mesquite and sagebrush. Jonas fired blindly behind him, muzzle flashes briefly revealing his location. Anna ducked low, trusting her horse's instincts to dodge obstacles. She aimed her revolver, but each time she tried to line up a shot, Jonas twisted or the terrain intervened. Minutes stretched in an adrenaline-fueled eternity. Anna felt her strength ebb. Blood seeped through fresh bandages. But Lucy's image propelled her forward. She would not let this young Hastings slink away, free to terrorize the region or ambush Stillwater Falls some other day. She pressed on, spurring her mount, closing the gap yard by yard. Suddenly, Jonas veered into a dry riverbed. Anna followed, hooves kicking up clouds of dust. The terrain dipped sharply, surrounding them with high banks that cut off the horizon. Her heart thudded. If Jonas decided to make a stand here, it could be lethal. She slowed slightly, scanning the shadows, anticipating a trap. A shot rang out from behind a boulder, the bullet zinging past Anna's ear. She hauled on the reins, throwing her horse sideways. Jonas had dismounted, using the rocky outcrop as cover. Another shot thundered, striking Anna's horse in the flank. The animal screamed, stumbling. Anna fought to keep her seat, a wave of terror flooding her. She'd be a sitting target if she fell. Desperately, she swung free of the saddle, landing on her feet but hitting the ground so hard her wounded shoulder flared in agony. She stifled a cry, rolling behind a nearby stone. Her horse, wounded and panicked, galloped off, leaving her stranded. Jonas's mocking laughter echoed through the gulch. "Look at that," he called, voice trembling with a mix of rage and triumph. The legendary Quicksilver Carter, crawling in the dirt. Anna's breathing came in ragged gasps. Stay calm, she reminded herself. He's still a Hastings. He'll relish fear. Carefully, she inched up, peering over the rock. Jonas had taken shelter behind a cluster of boulders, maybe 20 yards away. He carried a revolver, reloading it with frantic haste. She checked her own weapon. 3 shots left. Would it be enough? Grimly, she decided yes. Her entire life had led to these moments, each tragedy forging her into a woman capable of standing toe-to-toe with the worst outlaws. Now was the time to prove it. Jonas fired again, the bullet ricocheting off her cover. She timed the muzzle flash, popping up to return a shot. Sparks illuminated the gulch. The bullet chipped the boulder inches from Jonas's face, forcing him to duck. He unleashed a torrent of curses. Anna dropped back into cover, heart hammering. "You killed my brother!" Jonas's shout reverberated. "I heard what you did at your cabin. Now you and your whole town are going to pay." Anna clenched her jaw. "Your brother chose violence. So have you." No response, only silence. She realized Jonas might be moving. Carefully, she crawled to a different rock, ignoring the searing pain in her shoulder. She glimpsed movement up ahead. Jonas trying to flank her from the right. She steadied her revolver, finger on the trigger. He sprang into the open, gun raised. Anna's world funneled into that single moment. The hiss of her breath, the pound of her heartbeat, the aim of her revolver. She squeezed the trigger, bracing for recoil. The shot echoed in the narrow ravine. Jonas jerked backward, his weapon firing wild into the night sky. A strangled sound tore from his throat as he collapsed. For several heartbeats, Anna remained prone, revolver still trained on Jonas's motionless form. When he didn't stir, she pushed herself to stand. Pain hammered her, but she forced it down. She hobbled over, eyes scanning for signs of life. A bullet hole marred his chest, blood soaking his shirt. Jonas Hastings lay still. "It's done," she thought. a heady mix of relief and sorrow swirling in her mind. The last Hastings brother. She exhaled unsteadily, her body demanding rest. The night sky pressed down, and the dust of the dry riverbed swirled around her ankles. With no horse, no immediate help, and a bullet wound that throbbed with every heartbeat, she faced a long road back to Stillwater Falls. But Lucy's face filled her thoughts, guiding her forward with a mother's fierce determination. At dawn, Anna Carter stumbled into the outskirts of Stillwater Falls. Exhaustion draped her like a heavy cloak, her steps faltering from blood loss and sheer fatigue. She had walked the better part of the night, following the faint glow of the eastern sky as her only compass. Dust coated her clothes, mingling with dried blood on her bandages. Residents awoke to a stirring commotion as a word spread. Anna was back, battered yet alive. Ms. Lane rushed forward, arms outstretched. Lucy trailed behind, her eyes brimming with alarmed relief. Anna managed a weak smile before her knees buckled. She felt strong arms catch her. Someone laid her gently on the ground, calling for Dr. Beckett. When Anna regained consciousness an hour later, she found herself in a bed at Miss Lane's boarding house, the sunlight streaming through drawn curtains. Lucy hovered at the bedside, tears tracking silent paths down her cheeks. Dr. Beckett knelt nearby, cleaning and rebandaging Anna's wounded shoulder. She felt the sting of antiseptic, but the laudanum dulled the edges. "You're lucky to be alive," Dr. Beckett admonished, carefully checking for infection. "You reopened your wound. Lost too much blood. Another day out there, you could have died." Anna managed to nod. She turned her head toward Lucy, gently squeezing her daughter's hand. "I had to finish it," she whispered. A hush settled in the room, broken by Ms. Lane's soft voice. "Sheriff Finnegan returned a few hours ago with good news. They cornered Everett Hastings at the ranch. He's in custody now, badly wounded." Relief coursed through Anna. So Everett Hastings lived, but in shackles. Jonas was dead. The Hastings brothers' reign of terror had ended, one way or another. Lucy's lips trembled as she leaned closer. "You came back," she murmured, tears falling. Anna mustered a frail laugh, though it hurt to breathe. "I promised." Outside in the corridor, voices spoke in hushed tones. Anna recognized Hank Rowland's baritone, likely briefing Ms. Lane on final details from the ambush. She caught snippets. "Lost 2 men, but we got them pinned. Everett wounded, rest scattered." Dr. Beckett finished with the bandage and patted Anna's good arm. "Rest now. No more heroics. Let your body heal." She relented, closing her eyes. Lucy gently climbed onto the edge of the bed, careful not to disturb Anna's injuries. The child's presence was a balm to the turmoil swirling in Anna's mind. Together they remained there as hours passed into a blur of aches, painkillers, and half-formed dreams. By late afternoon, Anna awakened to find Sheriff Finnegan sitting in a chair at her bedside. The lines on his face spoke of fatigue, but also relief. "How do you feel?" he asked quietly. "Like I wrestled a bull," Anna rasped. Finnegan's expression softened. "You went after Jonas alone," they said. "Found his body out in a dry riverbed. You saved this town, Anna." She couldn't quite muster a proud smile, only a pained grimace. "I just did what I had to do." Finnegan inclined his head, a gesture of deep respect. "The town council, they'd like to recognize your efforts, officially, a ceremony or something like it. But I told them to let you recover first." Anna closed her eyes, exhausted by the mere idea of a public display. "All that matters is that Lucy and the people here are safe. I never wanted glory." Finnegan nodded. "Well, you've got it anyway. Folks are calling you a hero." His words hung in the quiet air. In that moment, Anna realized the secrecy she'd clung to for years was gone. Quicksilver Carter's reputation was reborn in Stillwater Falls, but under circumstances that aligned more with protection than performance. For the first time, she found she could live with that. Over the next week, Stillwater Falls cautiously exhaled as news spread that all 3 Hastings brothers were accounted for. Jackson and Jonas dead, Everett under heavy guard in the town's makeshift jail, awaiting transport to a larger prison. Their scattered men either fled the territory or were captured by the volunteer patrols. The threat that had loomed so large began to dissipate like morning mist under the rising sun. The townsfolk turned their attention to rebuilding and reinforcing. Bullet-riddled fences were mended. Broken windows and damaged barns were repaired. The Carter homestead, scene of Jackson Hastings' demise, received extra help from neighbors. Ranchers brought fresh lumber to fix the bullet holes in Anna's walls, free of charge. Ms. Nichols' students used part of a school project to paint a new sign for the Carter gate, proclaiming it Safe Haven Farm. At Ms. Lane's boarding house, Lucy busied herself helping with chores, carrying trays to guests, sweeping floors, and occasionally sneaking into Anna's room to check on her mother's recovery. Dr. Beckett marveled at Anna's resilience. "You must be made of iron," he remarked, removing her old bandages. The wound was healing, though slowly. Anna's days blurred into a routine of rest, short walks to regain strength, and quiet conversations with Lucy. The tension that once shadowed their every move had eased. They had defeated the nightmares that had chased them from place to place. For once, Anna envisioned a future that didn't involve packing a wagon to flee in the dead of night. Late one afternoon, a gentle knock sounded on Anna's door. Sheriff Finnegan stepped in, hat in hand. "Mind if I come in?" he asked politely. Anna nodded, sitting up against the pillows. Lucy sat on the adjacent chair, reading a worn copy of a geography book. She glanced up, giving Finnegan a shy smile. The sheriff cleared his throat. "I have a message from Marshal Robert Granger. He's heard about the Hastings brothers' capture and deaths. Wants me to convey his thanks to you personally. Also, he's arranged for a portion of the bounty to be paid out." Anna blinked in surprise. "The bounty? I hadn't thought—" Finnegan gave a small shrug. "The Hastings brothers collectively had a large price on their heads. By law, it goes to those responsible for their downfall. That's you, in large part, along with folks who helped in the ambush." She glanced at Lucy, a swirl of emotions playing across her features. Money might secure a comfortable future for them, yet part of her felt uneasy profiting from such violence. "What about the families of the ranchers who lost their lives?" she asked quietly. "We'll see to it they get a fair share," Finnegan assured her. "But you and Lucy deserve to live without worry, Anna. You've earned that much." Anna said nothing, only nodded. Silence stretched until Finnegan cleared his throat again. "There's one more thing. The town council wants to formally appoint you as a frontier protector, an honorary title, meaning they'd like you to stay on as an advisor in law enforcement matters." Lucy perked up, beaming, but Anna's expression turned thoughtful. She recalled her days as Quicksilver Carter, performing stunts for crowds, then the horror of losing Lucy's father to violence. Could she truly stand on the side of the law, dedicating her skills to defending a single town? "This is a new start," Finnegan said softly, as though reading her thoughts. "Stillwater Falls is your home now, if you'll have it. No more running." Anna felt Lucy's small hand slip into hers. For a moment, tears threatened to form. She saw in Lucy's face the hopeful glow of a child who had finally found stability. She remembered the solemn vow she'd made after burying Lucy's father. Never again would they be helpless. Now, for the first time, she felt the sense of completion in that vow. Looking up at Finnegan, Anna managed a smile. "Yes," she said, her voice catching with emotion. "I'll stay." 2 weeks passed, and the energy in Stillwater Falls shifted from wariness to celebration. Citizens gathered for a modest ceremony in front of the church. Sheriff Finnegan presented tokens of gratitude to all who had defended the town. Ranchers, volunteer watchmen, even the 2 men who posed as decoys at the abandoned ranch. The biggest cheer, however, erupted when Finnegan called Anna Carter to the small platform. Lucy stood among the onlookers, clapping with more enthusiasm than anyone else. Anna took the stage with a gentle wave of her bandaged arm, still healing but no longer in a sling. She felt uneasy under so many eyes, yet she also sensed genuine warmth radiating from the crowd. "Folks," Finnegan addressed them, "you all know Anna Carter. She arrived as a quiet widow, but turned out to be Quicksilver Carter, the sharpshooter who dismantled the Hastings brothers' threat. We owe her and her daughter a debt." He nodded solemnly. "Because of her courage, many of us are still standing here today." The applause was thunderous for such a small town. Anna's cheeks warmed. She raised her good hand, calling for silence. "Thank you," she began, voice steadier than she expected. "I never set out to be a hero. I just wanted a home for my daughter, Lucy. something stable and safe. The Hastings brothers threatened that safety for all of us. I did what anyone would do in my place. Fight back. Her words earned another round of applause, and Lucy's eyes shone with pride. Ms. Lane dabbed at her own tears. Hank Rowland, leaning on a crutch from his leg wound, offered a respectful tilt of his hat. Then Anna turned to Lucy, beckoning her up onto the platform. The crowd parted, encouraging Lucy to join her mother. The young girl stood by Anna's side, smaller but equally resolute. Anna placed a hand on Lucy's shoulder, ignoring the twinge in her own. I wouldn't be here without her, Anna said, voice thick with emotion. Lucy's the reason I found courage I didn't know I had. Looking out over the townsfolk, Anna saw acceptance. No longer the suspicion that might greet a drifter or an outsider with a mysterious past. They embraced her just as she had embraced them. Sheriff Finnegan extended a small wooden plaque, crudely carved but heartfelt, designating Anna Carter as an honorary frontier defender. She accepted it with a hint of a tear in her eye. The ceremony concluded with a communal feast around the church's yard. Simple food, mostly stew and fresh bread, but spiced with relief and gratitude. Lucy ran among the children, half laughing, half holding on to Anna's hand whenever she came back to check on her mother. The evening sky, tinted pink and gold, felt like a promise of better tomorrows. As dusk settled, Ms. Lane guided Anna away from the crowd, toward a quiet spot near the cottonwood trees behind the church. Lucy scampered off to help Miss Nichols gather leftover plates. Ms. Lane, hands folded in front of her, spoke softly. Your husband would be proud of you, Anna, of the life you're building for Lucy. Anna's gaze drifted skyward. A gentle breeze rustled the cottonwood leaves. She recalled the day she lost Lucy's father, how it propelled them into wandering. The black suffocating anger that once drove her to hunt down those responsible had been tempered by the need to protect Lucy. Now, here in this small settlement that recognized her for who she was, she felt a sense of peace. Thank you, she whispered to Ms. Lane, emotion catching in her throat. I think he'd be glad I found a place to belong. Ms. Lane nodded, eyes shining. Stillwater Falls is better for having you both. In that tranquil moment, Anna understood that the darkness she carried wasn't fully gone. Memories of death and violence would linger, but she also realized that in forging this new life, forging these bonds, she had reclaimed a measure of light for Lucy, and, to some degree, for herself. Summer slipped into autumn with a gentle grace. The nights cooled, and the desert winds carried the scent of mesquite and distant sage. Stillwater Falls adapted to its new sense of security. Travelers passing through the mercantile commented on the transformation. A town once rumored to be an easy mark for outlaws now boasted an organized watch and a sharpshooting guardian. Lucy returned to school with renewed focus, though classmates occasionally peppered her with questions about her mother. Is she really that good a shot? One boy asked in awe. Lucy would just smile mysteriously, giving no direct answer. She no longer needed to hide her mother's capabilities, yet neither did she feel the urge to brag. It was enough to know they were safe. Anna divided her time between tending her homestead and advising Sheriff Finnegan. The bullet holes in her walls were patched, the garden replanted, the chicken coop expanded. Each improvement felt like an affirmation that they were no longer running. Sometimes Lucy practiced with the smaller rifle behind the barn, guided by her mother's calm instructions. Anna insisted Lucy understand that firearms should be the last resort, not the first. The shockwaves of the Hastings brothers' downfall reverberated across the territory. A telegraph from Marshal Granger arrived, congratulating Stillwater Falls and praising Anna's valor. Word spread that other outlaw gangs were less eager to test a settlement protected by Quicksilver Carter. A few drunken drifters attempted petty crimes, only to be swiftly deterred by the newly vigilant community. In time, Anna's shoulder healed enough for her to regain most of her skill at the firing range. She never returned to the flashy exhibitions of her youth, but she did help the sheriff's deputies refine their marksmanship. A few neighboring towns requested her counsel on defense tactics. Anna considered each request carefully, always balancing her desire to keep Lucy's life stable against the territory's broader needs. One particularly crisp morning, mother and daughter rose early. They rode together out to a quiet hillside overlooking Stillwater Falls, the rising sun bathing the town in golden light. Lucy dismounted, gazing across the rooftops where she saw faint plumes of smoke from breakfast fires. "It looks so peaceful," she remarked, letting the reins dangle from her small hands. Anna nodded, inhaling the fresh air. "We've come a long way," she said softly, remembering the anxious nights, the half-finished meals abandoned when they heard an outlaw rumor, the sorrow etched into their journey since Lucy's father's death. Now at last they had a place where Lucy could grow, not just survive. They stood in companionable silence for a while, until Lucy piped up. "Mom, Ms. Nichols said there's a new arithmetic test next week. She thinks I'm ready to skip a level." Anna flashed a proud smile. "Of course you are. Your mind was always good with numbers." She gave Lucy's hair a playful ruffle. Lucy tilted her head, eyes shining. "I want to make you proud. Maybe become a teacher or a doctor, so I can help people too." A lump formed in Anna's throat. All the wandering, all the struggles, had been to give Lucy the choice to be anything she wanted. "You already make me proud every day," she whispered, hugging her daughter gently. From that vantage, they saw a rider approaching from the south, a simple ranch hand bringing supplies into Stillwater Falls. No threat, just everyday commerce. It was a scene of normalcy that Anna welcomed. Lucy climbed back onto her pony, glancing over her shoulder at her mother. "Ready to head home?" Anna smiled. Home. The word held a warmth she had almost forgotten existed. She mounted her horse, reins in hand, guiding Lucy forward. Under the gentle morning sun, they descended the hillside, returning to the life they had built from the ashes of grief and the fires of conflict. The roads ahead would bring new challenges. This was still the frontier, after all. But Anna no longer felt the constant urge to look over her shoulder. She had Lucy, a community that stood beside her, and the quiet conviction that sometimes the deadliest gunslinger was the one who defended rather than destroyed. And so the widow once called Quicksilver Carter, infamous sharpshooter and fierce protector, found her true legacy not in the bullet-riddled dust of an exhibition stage, but in the steady heartbeat of a town that embraced her as family. A legacy built not on fear, but on hope, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her daughter. When the gun smoke finally cleared and the dust settled on Stillwater Falls, it wasn't just a victory for Quicksilver and her daughter. It was a triumph for everyone who ever believed in standing tall against impossible odds. Through bravery, determination, and the unmatched skill of a legendary sharpshooter, the town not only survived, it emerged stronger than ever. To me, this story is a powerful reminder of the timeless American spirit, community, resilience, and the unwavering courage to defend what matters most. Did this epic showdown stir memories of your favorite classic westerns, or remind you of the heroes you admired growing up? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this wild ride, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. There's always another great story waiting for you here